Hi guys, it's Megan. I am very excited to share with you my kindergarten lesson plan that I wrote for reading literature. Just to give you guys a little bit of background information, I am teaching kindergarten. I typically have between 21 and 23 students in my class. Last year, which is the background information I used to create my lesson plan, I had 11 girls and 10 boys, and the majority of my class were considered English language learners. Our school is located in a very diverse community. I will be teaching at SVN again next year, so this data I expect to be about the same for my incoming kindergarten class. So I have students who speak a variety of languages. Most of them, it's either Somali or Spanish. We did have some that spoke Vietnamese or Burmese as well. The student ability ranged in my classroom. We had students who were meeting our standard-based learning goals and some who were still working towards mastering those goals. The first benchmark test that we took at the beginning of last year showed that 52% of my students who entered kindergarten were performing in the 20th percentile or below. And that data came from the STAR Early Literacy and Math test. So similarly, what you can expect from that score is a lot of our students couldn't identify or differentiate between letters and numbers. They couldn't write their name or even recognize their name. So, they kind of came in underperforming for where we wanted them to be. So that kind of set the stage for knowing where we needed to focus our instruction. As far as other disabilities, we had one student who had a slight visual impairment, so she definitely needs to sit close to the board, and she would have trouble with that perception as far as like cut and paste. We would most of the time assign another student to assist her with that. So that'll come and play later on with my product for my lesson plan, just making sure that I give her the support that she needs for our cut and paste activity. We had one other student with a communication delay, so that was really just someone who saw a speech and language pathologist to assist him with communicating effectively. So I just knew the barriers that he was working to overcome and made sure that I provided him supports and scaffolds for that speech barrier. So the learning goals for my lesson are Missouri Learning Standards, KR2AA, which is with assistance, read, infer, and draw conclusions to identify elements of a story, including setting, characters, and key events. So that's a big one that we focus on in kindergarten pretty much all year long. The second supporting standard is with assistance, read, infer, and draw conclusions to retell a main event from a story read aloud or familiar stories. So those two things kind of come hand in hand. The first one that we always teach is character setting and events in the story. So just being able to name who the story is mostly about, where the story took place, and what happened in the story. And so that's definitely the foundation that was already laid for these students. And then we were bringing in the supporting standard of being able to retell the main event. We want our students to be able to tell us what happened in the beginning, middle, and end of the story. And while they're explaining that, we want them to use those characters, settings, and key details, or key events, to explain that. So I transferred those Missouri Learning Standards into student-friendly language. And our I CAN statement for the lesson, which I always post up on the board and have the students read aloud if they're able, or I read it to them in the beginning of the year, would be I can retell the main event from a story. So that would be beginning, middle, and end. And then at least that's how we do it at our school. We consider retelling sequencing. So we do beginning, middle, and end for that standard. And then the second thing, which we had already covered, but we are again always assessing and always working towards identifying, I can identify the characters, setting, and events in the story. So moving on to the content portion of the lesson plan. This lesson is going to take place during Reader's Workshop. We kind of do a modified Reader's Workshop. We try to follow the Lucy Calkins method, but we also want to make sure that we're giving explicit instruction for these comprehension skills because our students do need that additional support when it does come to comprehension. So we kind of do a little bit of each thing. So every morning we do have Reader's Workshop, and it's during this time that we introduce reading skills that we'll be using throughout the unit and school year. So each week of Reader's Workshop, this is kind of how we make it really fun for the kids, is it has a different theme. So we'll normally focus on that overarching theme all week long, which is great for our English language learners because it really gives them an opportunity to interact with the material and the content and practice what they're learning, practice their comprehension skills, their retelling skills, or when we go into nonfiction, identifying key details and main topic. Anyway, so we normally, like I said, we have an overarching theme for the week, and we'll have a poem that we'll recite every single day that goes along with our theme. And then we'll have at least one read aloud, sometimes two, depending on what the theme is or what we're trying to cover. So for this specific week, we have one poem and one read aloud. The read aloud, we might read every single day, or at least parts of the book. Definitely the first 2 to 3 days, we'll read the entire read aloud every single day. Which that's great for our kids because they need to hear the words again, they need to see the pictures, and they need to interact with the content. We also do a craft. We call it Craft Friday, and the kids absolutely look forward to those days. And the craft always goes along with our theme. Our students love Reader's Workshop. It's the first thing that we do in the morning, which is great because they're really focused and engaged. And they look forward to it. They can't wait to hear what the new theme is, and by the end of the week, they're reciting the poem. So they enjoy engaging in these stories in fun and creative ways, and it really helps them become motivated to develop their reading skills. So this specific lesson will be the first day of the second week of Unit 2. So the second week of Unit 2 is focusing on retelling stories. The supporting standard is, of course, identifying the characters and setting. So the students have learned already all about character and setting, and we've practiced that. We did that a lot in Unit 1, and then we've really mastered it last week, the week before this lesson takes place. So the main goal for Reader's Workshop in this unit is retelling using the characters in the setting. And the students have been exposed to retelling the week preceding this lesson, and they're familiar with the idea. So we've talked about it, we've created an anchor chart. They know what it means, or should have a pretty good idea of what it means to retell a story, as well as a good idea of characters and setting. So that kind of gives you some background of the content that we're working with, background on my students. So now I'll go into the process of what the lesson looks like. So the theme for this week's lesson is the Three Little Pigs. So in our retelling units, we try to use stories that have pretty good sequencing. So we have Three Billy Goats Gruff, the Three Little Pigs, the Three Little Bears, and there's one more that I can't think of right now. So this week specifically, we're going to be talking and reading about the Three Little Pigs. So for Reader's Workshop, students will sit crisscross on the carpet. We always do our whole group instruction at the carpet in my classroom. And so they'll start crisscross applesauce right after community meeting. So we'll have them sitting in their carpet spots. And then we immediately stand up, and they love this because they get to get their wiggles out, and we'll do our poem. So the poem for the Three Little Pigs week is called Little Piggy, and I have a little printout here of what it looks like. So it's really cute. It has some pictures on there. And in the beginning of the year, we'll sing-song it, and I'll read a line, and then the kids will read a line. By the end of the year, they can read most of the poems that we use, and so that's super fun. We put it up on the Elmo, and the kids get to read it. They read it no matter what. It's just sometimes I read it first, and then they repeat. So at this point in the year, they're probably still repeating, definitely with some of these words. So I would put this up on the Elmo, so it's up on the smartboard really big for them. And we would stand up and we create actions for the poems as well. So for the little pigs, we'd say, pigs have ears, and then they would repeat after me, pigs have ears, and we would touch our ears. Pigs have tails, and they would repeat after me, and then we'd turn around and pretend like we had a little curly tail. Pigs have 4 little feet, and then we would probably maybe stomp our feet or something. Something fun to get them moving. And the other thing that I appreciate about these poems is the students love them. They remember them by the end of the week. But it's also, for my English language learners, it gives them exposure to the topic a little bit more. So they're learning more about the animals, or they're at least seeing pictures, hearing different vocabulary words, which seems pretty primary, but honestly, a lot of my kiddos come in with very low WIDA scores, and they need to hear this basic vocabulary over and over and over. So pointing to your ears and saying ears is extremely helpful for them, and that will be helpful for them in future literacy lessons as well as their oral language development too. So anyway, we'll go through the poem and we'll have little actions. We'll say like pigs love dirt. We might hold our heart or something like that. Pigs love mud. And then pigs just love to eat. So they're learning a little bit more about pigs. They're having fun. They're moving their bodies. They're getting their wiggles out, because right after this, I have them sit back down and they go right back into crisscross applesauce for our read aloud. So I know that for some of my kiddos, some of those read alouds can be challenging because they do have to sit still and listen. When we read alouds, we don't shout out. We sit crisscross applesauce, spoons in our bowl, eyes on the teacher, and our ears listening. So I know that that can be difficult for 5 and 6-year-olds. So I make sure that we do that little poem first. We get to use our mouths and our actions, and that kind of gets them, they kind of get their wiggles out for a minute so they can sit still a little bit easier. So let's see here. We'll then read the read aloud. And I don't have a copy of the read aloud. It's in my classroom. I don't have access to my classroom until Wednesday of next week. So I apologize about that. But it's just The Three Little Pigs by, let's see here, Paul Galdone. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But he writes a lot of the fairy tale books that we use in our school. So let's see here. After the poem, we're sitting crisscross with listening bodies, and I will, again, tell them the objective of the lesson, that we're going to, I'm going to let them know we're working on character and setting for a long time, and we did really great with that goal. I also believe it's really important to let them know about their progress towards learning goals. So, let them know, hey, we did great with that. We're going to continue to learn more about that, and we're going to pick up where we left off on retelling last week. So I'll reference our data board for both of those standards and kind of let them know where we're at as a class and where we're trying to get to. So we want 4 stars, or a score of 4 for all of our standards. And so we'll update our whole class. It's not done individually. It's done by like a percentage of the class. And we'll update our stars that way. So I want them to know what the objective is and how close we are to meeting it. And then I'll read aloud the book. So I will stop when the characters are introduced and discuss the characters with the students. I will also pause when appropriate and ask about the setting of the story. So during the read aloud, I take time, and so pausing to stop about the character and setting is just, again, teaching them to think about those things while they're reading, and think about those things when they're listening to stories as well. So stopping and like, oh, we just met a character. Who is this character? Oh, that's, pig number 1 who's going to build a house out of straw, or whatever it may be. The setting, we also talk a lot about how it changes. So I can ask on a couple different pages, like, oh, what's the setting of the story now? Now they're building a house, or now they're in the apple orchard, or whatever it may be. Also, a big part of my lessons, especially with my high population of English language learners, is taking time to explain unfamiliar vocabulary. And this story does have quite a few words that I stop and explain as we're reading. Sometimes I'll ask the kids if they can infer what they think the word means. Say, let's use our clues here. What do we think this word means? And sometimes, we get a lot of off-the-wall answers, and I just have to tell them. No matter what, though, I always pull out 3 to 4 words for each read aloud, and we'll quickly touch on the vocabulary when the words come up. So I have picture cards that also have the words on them that I'll use and pin up on the board as we're going. So if we come along the word fortune, for example, I would stop and talk about, what does fortune mean? What do we think? Let's use our clues. Okay, fortune is, having a lot of money. And, I might have them come up with a symbol like money, something like that. And then I would show this on the Elmo, so it goes up really big on the smartboard, so they can see the word and the real life picture that goes with it. That's one thing that I really love about our literacy curriculum, is we have real life pictures to go with our vocabulary. So we have fortune. Another word I would talk to them about is bundle. And of course I would have these cut out and laminated probably. And then huffed, and then blaze. So for each word, I'm going to show them the word with the real life picture, and we're going to make an action for it, or I'll already have an action for most of them. Sometimes there are some really crazy words, and I'll say like, ooh, turn and talk with your partner about what you think the action should be for that word. And that gets them really into the vocabulary. It kind of also gives them some ownership over the word, and they'll retain it a lot better. So that's just a fun way that I kind of help explain the meanings of new words for them, give them a real life picture, give them an action, so I'm reaching multiple learning styles. And it's great even for my non-ELL students to develop those new words, because those are some difficult, tricky words sometimes. So we focus on the words more throughout the week too. So this is the first day. It's just kind of an introduction. I've shown the picture, we'll do the action, and then we'll actually have a separate part of the lesson the next day that we go back and really revisit that. We'll play a little game, like I'll do the action, they try to tell me the word, or vice versa. So we'll go through the read aloud. When the read aloud is finished, I will ask the class to think about the characters in the story. So I kind of mentioned it while I was reading, like, oh, we just met a character. Who's that character? And same with the setting. But after the story, I'm going to ask them to have a thinking body, which will look like this. They close their eyes and put their hands on their head. And they're going to be thinking about who the character was. And I'll give them a set amount of think time. Normally it's about like 7 seconds. And then I'll have them turn and talk with their partner about the characters in the story. I also always give them a sentence starter for turn and talks. And this is, again, extremely helpful for my English language learners, because their brains are working really hard on constructing a sentence and communicating what they're thinking. And so I want to give them a little bit of assistance, a little bit less to have to think about. So I always give them a sentence starter for turn and talks. So I'll walk around while they're doing the turn and talk. I have a little clipboard, and on my clipboard, let's see, I have my data sheet, which I printed off just kind of like a little template of what it looks like. So it'll have the student name, and then it has a little box for each section that we're kind of working on. And this is editable for me, so I'll change it each week. And I have one for all the content areas. And then I have like a miscellaneous for like anecdotal notes, anything that I'm like noticing or wondering or want to remember for the next day. Because as you guys know, when you're in the middle of all of your lessons, it can get a little crazy. So as they're turning and talking, I'll go around and I'll focus on this character box. And I'll put a check mark or an X or notes, whatever I need to do to make sure that I'm hearing as many students indicate character in the story correctly. So I'll do that for character. And then I'll know too, what do I need to reteach? Who do I need to have in my small, what do I need to focus on in my small groups? Who do I need to pull one-on-one, etc. So I use that sheet for everything, and it's really helpful for me to have all my things in one spot for each content. Let's see here. We'll come back together whole group and we'll create an anchor chart. And I'll already have pictures of the characters cut out and ready, which I don't believe I have an exact picture of that printed out, but I'll have like each pig and the wolf. And then for the setting, I have the houses. So I'll have those, we'll put those up on the top part of our anchor chart. So we'll have character, setting on the top part of our anchor chart, and I'll ask them to raise their hands and give me like, okay, I heard this group saying some great things. What did you guys think? And then I'll call on them and put it up on the board. So we'll do that again with setting, but I'll ask them to turn and talk with a different partner. So we have shoulder partners, and then we have knee partners. So shoulder partner is the person sitting right next to you, and they know who that is on the carpet. It's the same every time I say shoulder partner, unless we move carpet spots. Knee partner, so we'll have 4 rows, so they turn around and talk to the person in front of or behind them. So for setting, we'll do the same process, but this time with your knee partner. And this will be pretty quick because they should know this. We'll come back together and we'll put the picture of the setting up on the anchor chart. So on our top part of our anchor chart at this point, we have the characters and settings already done. They've gotten to kind of get their wiggles out, talk to partners, and they're ready to move on.